Greg, I am so excited to have you here. I have heard your name.
Oh, you say that to all the guys.
You know, I have not, because I have heard your name since years ago when I had lived out in LA, which was like 40 years ago.
I bet you thought I was a tall white guy, didn't you?
You know, and I'm kind of shocked, as a matter of fact. When I think about it. But really, you really have consistently been dedicated to the music industry, and your career and what you have done and what you continue to do is really amazing. So we want to tap into some of that.
Well, you know, Dom, music been very, very good to me, Dom. Very, very good to me. Music is very, very good.
Where did it begin? Where did it start? You were young, Detroit, Michigan.
I was born a poor white child in Detroit. I am from Detroit, and I started playing, as the legend has, that my mother has explained to me. And now that I have twin 2-year-olds, I'm starting to think, did I really start at the age they are now? But the legend is that I started it too, playing by ear. And at around 6, I started, taking formal lessons with a private teacher that would come to the house, I guess weekly, and I would do elementary stuff. And then after a few years, I moved on to a more intermediate teacher that I started taking advantage of, because I thought I was hot snot and I didn't need to, listen to her that much. And so my mom said, right, we're not having any more of that. So she connected me with a ruthlessly hard instructor whose name was Misha Kotler, and he was the pianist with the Detroit Symphony Orchestra.
This was the test for you then.
Oh, he didn't take any mess. He was like this Polish, I think, or Russian, Polish or something. He could crack a pane of glass with his finger like this. He was no joke. And he whipped me into shape. I left his place, with my head between my legs many times in tears, because he was the discipline that I needed. He provided the discipline that I needed.
Right.
As far as classical studies. And, I was with him for a good few years, at least.
So
yeah.
you can appreciate that discipline now.
Yeah.
At that time, it was tough.
Yeah, it was an adjustment, but it's what I needed,
Yeah.
It's what I needed.
So you started practicing, so you have a real formal sense of training.
I was always practicing, but in varying degrees. But with Mr. Kotler, there was no wiggle room. And he was very specific about the most effective ways to practice.
Right. So what kind of genres were you listening to then? Was it mostly classical
I was
music?
listening to everything. Because you got to remember, growing up in Detroit, what was the obvious thing we had?
Yeah, absolutely.
Motown.
Motown was big.
And so I had that richness. I was also very much into the British invasion, the Beatles, the Stones, the Dave Clark Five, and then later on Elton John, and then the whole rock thing with, the rock influence with Seeger and Creedence Clearwater Revival, and Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, and not to mention other regional soul genres like the Chicago sound and Memphis sound with Al Green and all. So I listened to everything.
But
Jazz.
You were studying. I was studying
classical
training, and then you'd step out and listen to whatever you wanted.
But I was always listening to. I remember listening to Lee Morgan's Sidewinder when I was a kid, and dancing to it.
Beautiful.
Ding, 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 So I literally listened to everything at the same time, which was great, because back then radio was playing everything at the same time.
Very different than what you could hear then to what you hear now.
Yeah.
So were you buying records? Were you just listening to the radio?
All of that. Okay. And I became completely enamored with and captivated by Stevie. And I just really had this spiritual connection to him that I couldn't explain. But it was so strong that I remember telling friends of mine in high school that I would eventually play with him.
Imagine the vision of you saying that. What was it like the first time you sat down and either met him or played with him?
Well, I have to give you this story, Dom. I hope you have time.
Please do. We'll make the time.
Your beard may grow by the end of this interview. So I'm in Detroit. My dear friend, who was a drummer who I played we played in a band together. I used to go with one of his sisters. He was first asked to audition for Stevie, and the night before he left, I went to his house. I'm withholding the name until the end, so
Please do, and I know who the name is. Yeah.
So the night before he left, I went to his house because I just wanted to tell him how thrilled I was for him. But he insisted that I play some things on a cassette, and he would take it to Steve. Now, this is the kind of friend he was. So the next day he leaves, and I don't hear from him for what seemed like a month, but it was probably a few days. And then early one morning he called me and said, Stevie wants to see you in New York today.
And you were living where at the time?
Detroit. We were both in Detroit. And he called me and said, Stevie wants to see you in New York. And now it was my first time going to New York. I am just loopy, flying around the house, grabbing clothes, and my mom's on her way to work. And she's like, what is the matter with you? I go, Stevie wants to see me in New York. She's like, well, bring clean underwear. That's all they care about.
That's a mom, right.
That's all they care. They don't care about it. If you die, okay, was his underwear clean? There's no tracks, right? Because then we'll have a problem. But so then I go, but I'm instructed on my way to the airport to pick up one of Steve's brothers. So now I get to go inside Stevie Wonder's house to wait to pick up one of his brothers.
Oh my
So
Lord.
I'm sitting there, and it's like this. I'm like, okay, I'm in Stevie Wonder's house. All right, I'm just here. And I never imagined that I'd be looking inside Steve. No one else was home but one of his brothers, and he comes down the stairs, and we go to the airport and land in New York, and I get settled at the hotel, and I go to the original Hit Factory studio. And I'm sitting there on pins and needles waiting.
How old are you at this time?
That's the other part of the punchline.
Okay.
And so I'm sitting there on pins and needles waiting for the inspiration of my life to walk through the elevator door, and eventually he does, and he comes in, and he's waddling in, the thing with his sister, and this handshake, when I shook his hand, was the single greatest handshake. He said, nice to meet you, and I went. So needless to say, I was excited, and we talked a while, and we did some small talk and played a little bit, and he played one of his unreleased tunes for me at the time, and he wanted to see how quickly I'd learn it, and I still remember what the song was. It turned out to be a song called Spring High that he eventually gave to Ramsey Lewis.
Interesting.
So that was that night. Now, the next day was the more formal audition with the rest of the band, and it was between me and this older-looking white guy who I have since reconnected with a couple years ago at a NAMM show, and it was hysterical to find out that he was the other guy that was auditioning, and he told me he was there because Chick Corea sent him. I never knew any of this, and so I'm there, but I'm doing my thing, and every once in a while, different band members would come up to me and go, "It's okay, you got it. Don't worry." So I'm like, okay, I'm still on pins and needles, and then that was over. I'm in the car with Steve on the way back to the studio, and he turns around and says, "Right, so how does it feel to be a member of Wonderlove?" So now my mind is like. Because I remember hearing about how he's a practical joker, and you never know when he's serious or not. So I said, "Are you serious?" And he went, "Of course." I said, "Oh, well then, would you mind telling my mom?" Because I figured you wouldn't lie to mom. So we get to the studio. I dial the house, give him the phone. The first voice she hears is Stevie Wonder's telling her that he wants her son to join his band, and he's going to take care of me, and blah, 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 blah. And he gives the phone back to me. And for the next 10 minutes, this is what you hear. So, sorry. His ears are bleeding now. He's like, what the hell? I didn't sign up for this. Can you let me know? So, now, two punchlines. This happened April 2nd, 1975. It was a month before I turned 19.
Nice.
And it was a month before he turned 25. Our birthdays are a day and 6 years apart. He was 25, Dom, working on Songs in the Key of Life.
Incredible. You need to think about that.
Just let that marinate for a minute.
I'm a huge Stevie fan.
Songs in the Key of Life, and he wasn't 25 yet.
And all those songs were hits. And he threw away many songs.
Well, not that he threw away. It's just that so many didn't make it.
That didn't make it on that album. That he saved, of course, used later on. But I mean, the creative writing genius of Stevie Wonder is unbelievable.
It's unbelievable. So there's that. The other part of the punchline is my dear friend actually did not get the gig with Steve, but Roy Ayers was hanging around at the time, and Roy said, well, if you don't get it with him, you got it with me. So he went with Roy. His name was Ricky Lawson.
Yeah.
One of the true greats, a dear, dear friend. And, you know, there's a saying that, you know, he would give you the shirt off of his back. He really literally would give you the shirt off. He would give anything.
Yeah.
He would come to wherever you lived to wash your car. I don't mean in a metaphorical sense. I mean, he literally enjoyed washing cars. It's something we used to do in Detroit, and it never left him. And I would talk to him, and he'd go, all right, now let me wash your car. I'm like, you know. And I actually let him do it one time. He came, I had to leave town, and he came all the way to my place. And I had a Range Rover at the time, and he cleaned it. And when I got back and saw it, it looked like I just bought it. It was unbelievable. So,
God rest his soul. What a beautiful person.
Yeah.
I had a chance of performing with Ricky a few times, doing some drum seminars together, and just a prince of a guy. He really is. He really was.
Absolutely. And we went on to work together with all kinds of people. You know, he was on the Bad and Dangerous tours that I did, you know, for Michael, and it's just incredible.
So here you are. You know, you're from Detroit. You have this vision and this dream.
It's a dream. Yeah.
Well, you turned that dream into a vision.
Well, no, God turned it into reality. I mean, it really was. It was just, you know, like I said, it was just in there, and it was undeniable. But I never ever thought on my own that it would actually happen. And when God opens the door and goes, and it actually happens, it's like, whoa, you know, you're just not ready for it. You know? Which is why it's the saying "be prepared" is very meaningful, because
it's an understatement.
Yeah, because you just never know. You never know when your dream is actually going to happen. So you want to work as hard as you can toward it.
Absolutely. You know, I asked the question many times if people during the time of Mozart, who were living in the time of Mozart, did they realize they were living in the time of greatness? That powerful?
Nah.
I asked the same question.
They knew he was great, but I don't think it was the same point of reference. And there was competition too, you know. There was Beethoven, there was Chopin, you know. But and those artists were in their own elite category.
Right.
But I think for the most part, you never realize what you have until it's gone.
But I say that the same thing about Stevie Wonder. Do people realize we're living in the life of Stevie Wonder at the time to understand his greatness?
Yeah, there's a much greater realization of that because of the technology involved that enables us to not only have recordings, but to have tributes, and to have those tributes recorded.
Yes.
Because I had the great honor of being music director for the Grammy special honoring him.
Beautiful.
And you know, had all these artists come on: Beyonce, Ed Sheeran, you know, Pharrell, Janelle Monáe, Jennifer Hudson, everybody, you know. Right. And it was just beautifully done and heartfelt. Lady Gaga killed, you know, Tony Bennett, please. And the bonus for me was I won an Emmy for it.
How great was that?
So that was not.
Congratulations, well earned, man. Good for you.
Thanks. So there was that.
So this kind of adulation and respect and being involved with this level of high musicianship, you've maintained this. I mean, out in the tour with Michael Jackson, that must have been an intensified learning process. You had to be on your game 100% of the time. What was that like?
Just as crazy as you think it was. I mean, you know, a large contributing factor to my being able to, you know, go as far as I have was I was working in the golden age of making records, where you actually got together with a bunch of other guys. You went to a specific place. It was called a studio.
Yeah.
You worked with a specific person called a producer, who worked with the artist, and you honed in the craft of making records for all different kinds of artists and genres. But the way I ended up with Michael, as far as the tour, was we were working on the Bad album, and every once in a while I'd be talking to him, and he'd go, "You like to perform, don't you?" I go, "Yeah." As time would pass, he goes, You enjoy the live performance, right?" I go, "Yeah, that's great." He goes, you like audiences, don't you? You like big I said, "Yeah, I do. I really enjoy." And he's like, you enjoy performing?" I go, "Yeah, why are you asking?" And then I went, "Oh, you want me to do the tour." He never really flat out asked me. He just would, skirt around it. So I mean, look, because everybody says, "Oh, he must have been such a perfectionist." Well, so am I.
Yeah.
And it's because of the discipline of working on the craft of making records and being an MD as well. Because before Michael, my first MD job was with Lionel Richie back in '83, I believe it was. '83 or '82.
That was your training ground.
Oh yeah, for the Can't Slow Down tour, and it was his first solo tour too.
Wow, interesting.
So we go from Lionel's first solo tour to Michael's, and I was ready for it. And there's a great element of trust and mutual respect that we both developed over the years of working together, Michael and I. Because I first started working with him and his brothers on the Destiny album.
Right.
Doing rhythm arrangements,
Right.
So that's how far back that goes. So, it was the right time and the right combination, and I'm really blessed for having been a part of that.
A fantastic history, and a part of this process, as far as people watching this conversation, is to understand that you put some serious time into knowing your craft.
Yeah.
So
a lot of hours, a lot of sessions, but they were always. They were, for the most part, just so enjoyable and just so much fun because, I was living in a time where the way you got your work was through one of a few main answering services, and you give them your home number because we didn't have cells, and they would call you. They had all your information, and you'd get this call from either Arlen's or Your Girl, or there was one other, and they'd say, "Right, so-and-so wants to know if you're available for a 10 o'clock on Wednesday, double session." Okay, done. And that's how you're booked. And this would go on and on and on, day after day, man. We just thought it would never end until the music business collapsed, but that's another story. Yeah, that training ground was just invaluable.
Right.
And it basically doesn't exist now.
So with the change of the music industry now, how do you adapt to what's happening at this point?
From understanding the fact that the way music is not only consumed but produced and created is different, and accepting and adapting to that, because if you don't adapt, you die.
Right.
Now I'm in this interesting status called legend.
You've earned it.
Not just for John, apparently. So now these kids are looking at me like I look at people like Herbie and Armando, and I still look at them that way. I was with Herbie. Okay, look, this is my life. I went to my buddy Herbie Hancock's house yesterday to personally wish him happy birthday. And I went in the living room and played it. I played my version of Happy Birthday on his Fazioli. Why? Because I can.
Put that into perspective, right?
Who does that? So just wonderful experiences like that. It keeps me refreshed, and it helps me, hopefully, to stay relevant or current, and also with the respect of these kids, like Bruno Mars, who had me play a solo on one of his songs for his newest album, 24K. I mean, that was a I think it was just as big of a deal for me. I mean, because I love him. I love his music, and he's a lovely guy.
Yeah.
And then I got to work with other guys like Ed Sheeran, and it's a wonderful thing to be able to share with the new crop as well.
But you've laid enough of a foundation, in the music industry that people know you. You've networked.
Well, yeah. I mean, I guess the sound that I'm told I've developed, people recognize it, and it's part of a sound that a lot of these younger artists are trying to emulate,
right,
or trying to recreate. So in their eyes, I'm a conduit to that. So it helps keep the rest off, I guess.
So what happens? How do you organize the business side of what you do? How do you maintain the calls, the emails, the information coming in? How do you organize all this?
It's not as deep as you might think. For major things, people know how to get in touch with me. It's not that difficult. When it comes to TV events, the producers that I've worked with over the years, we have relationships, so they just ask me. They just call me directly. Most of it's direct. One wonderful thing, as far as contact that happened last year, I'm minding my own business, and someone was trying to get in touch with me, and it was a manager for the artist Jules Holland. So I gave him my info, and I didn't think anything else of it. But they also managed someone else. So I'm minding my own business, and I get this email from someone I hadn't heard from in over 25 years. And he said, "Right, it's been an age, you fancy a tour?" I'm like, "How did you even find me?" So after I picked up my jaw from the floor, and said yes, because it's like, are you really going to say no to David Gilmour? I think not. Next thing I know, I'm doing a European summer tour with David Gilmour last year.
How beautiful.
And it was unbelievable in every way.
So you keep yourself organized.
No, I didn't say that. No. I didn't say that at all. I'm not organized. It's organization, what is that? I have twins, Dom. I don't know what you think.
I understand.
Yeah,
for sure.
Organization went out the window a long time ago. No, man, I'm not. Look, I have, I have a lawyer. I don't have a manager, but I have a contractor who we've worked together so much that people know that she's the person, to contact, for me. And it just happens. Ironically, it doesn't happen as much as you might think. I'm in a bit of a low period right about now. Not very much going on. Even though next month I'm gonna do Dave Kaz's jazz cruise.
Beautiful.
Yeah, so I'm preparing for that now. That's gonna be great. 2 weeks. I'm gonna spend my birthday somewhere in the ocean. So that'll be fun. And I'm actually gonna do a subsequent summer tour with Mr. Kaz, which will be fun. But the immediate things have not happened very much. I mean, there's more long-term things
right
coming, but it's been a little challenging.
And that's the ebb and flow of this insane business that we're in too, isn't it? Part of it.
Yeah.
People that are watching this here.
Yeah.
In closing, if you had to leave advice to the next generation of what they should prepare themselves for the music industry, so they can, have their dreams and maybe reach that vision as you did, what would you say to them?
I would say that if you have a really strong dream or desire to be part of this industry in any way, not just an artist, not just, in front of the mic or on stage. I mean, there's plenty of opportunities in production, administrative, legal, engineering, sound design, lighting, all kinds of things. But if you have any desire at all, do it because you love it, not because you think you're going to make a lot of money from it. And realize that you have a dream for a reason, and God gave it to you, and that He will bring it to pass. But you have to be patient, and you have to trust Him, and you have to just do all of the things motivationally to keep you focused. And if you play an instrument, learn that instrument. Develop your craft. It's easier said than done. I understand that. There's no single way to break into the business, because we don't really have much of a business now. It's very different. And I know you're used to seeing, Pop-Tarts results, popcorn results that fast, from watching shows like The Voice and American Idol and all that, but it doesn't usually happen that way. It takes time, and also, a lot of people like to say music is my life. Well, that's cute, but really, the reality is the life that you live is infused in your music. So I would say just keep living, and as you go from experience to experience, that will affect your musicianship. And most importantly, as Nadia Boulanger said to Quincy Jones, you are never more of a musician than you are a human being.
Very well said.
Okay.
Greg, you are a seasoned pro.
No, I'm just old.
Not as old as you think. You got a lot of years left in you.
I'm trying to hang on, Dom. I got twins. I'm trying to hang on.
I hear you loud and clear.
Okay,
Thank you so much. Absolutely great. Thank you so much.